Hi everyone, this is Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. I'm going to demonstrate how to make this really pretty 9-patch table runner. This table runner is a great project for you to do if you're trying to learn how to do quilting. It has a really classic quilt block in it called the 9-patch, which means there are 9 little squares in it. So let's get started. You'll need the following supplies. This 9-patch table runner has a finished size of approximately 12 inches by 60 inches long. Out of fabric A, you need a ½ yard of a solid dark fabric. Out of that, you're going to cut 10 4.5-inch squares. Fabric B is a ½ yard of a print. You'll need 8 4.5-inch squares. Fabric C, you'll need 1.5 yards of a solid light fabric. Out of that, you're going to cut 3 12.5-inch squares. You'll also use this same fabric to cut a piece for the back, and I will demonstrate how to do that later on in the video. Cotton batting, you're going to need to have a size that is 12.5 by 60 inches, and again I'll show you how to cut that out later towards the end of the video. When you buy cotton batting, sometimes you can find it pre-packaged, or you can buy it off of the big roll. To cut the fabric for the back of the table runner and the 3 solid squares that you need for the front, have your fabric folded selvage edges together down here at this end. Have the folded edge up here and have it straight across on the 1-inch line. Have your raw edge over here pulled past the 0 line going this way. Line up your ruler on that 0 line and cut this edge straight. Do not move your fabric. Move it over to the 12.5-inch line because you want to cut 3 strips 12.5 inches wide. Line up your ruler all the way across and cut your first strip. Then lift the ruler, do not move the fabric, go over 12.5 inches, which is going to be 25, line up the ruler, and cut. Then you're going to move it over one more time, another 12.5 inches to 37.5. Make sure you line up that ruler and cut your third strip. To cut the 3 12.5-inch squares for the front, take one of those strips and lay it out this way. So now you have the selvage edge over here. Pull it past the 0 line here. Have this edge here along the 1-inch line. The reason why I have you place it on the 1-inch line so that all these lines here are visible to you. So the first thing you're going to do is cut this selvage edge off. So place your ruler on the 0 line, line it up, and trim this edge off. Whoops, got a little crooked. There we go. Now don't move your fabric. Move the ruler over 12.5 inches and line it up. Cut your first square. Then you're going to move it over, just like we did before. You're going to cut it on the 25-inch line because that's going over another 12.5 inches. Cut your second square, and then you're going to go over to 37.5 to cut your third square. Make sure it's all lined up. And cut. For the print fabric, you're going to cut out one strip 4.5 inches wide. Place the folded edge of your fabric along here, just like you did earlier with the other fabric. Have your raw edge here, and your fabric is still folded, selvage edges together. Line up your ruler on that 0 line and cut this edge straight, because when you buy fabric, it's never cut straight on this edge, so it's important to straighten it out. Now, don't move your fabric. Lift up your ruler and place it on the 4.5-inch line. Line it up at both ends of the ruler. And then once you have it lined up, cut your strip. Lay the strip out this way and keep it folded with the selvage edges together. Then trim those selvage edges off. So place your 4.5-inch line of your ruler along this edge of the strip and cut the selvage edges off. Then I'm just going to turn the strip. Now you're going to cut 4-inch wide pieces going this way. So place your ruler, your 4.5-inch line, that's where my little post-it is, on this edge over here. So place it there. Also make sure your 4.5-inch line going this way is even with this edge of your fabric. And then cut your first 2 squares. And then again, keep moving it along every 4.5 inches. Make sure everything is straight, because if you take the time cutting it straight, you're going to be more successful. And continue cutting. Let me move my fabric over so you guys can see. And cut again. And you're going to cut one more time, and then you will have all 8 of your squares. Follow the same steps that you just did for cutting out the solid 4.5-inch squares. Line up your blocks in this pattern where you have 2 solids and a print in the first row, 1 solid and 2 prints in the second row, 2 solids and 1 print in the third row. Now you're going to stitch each row together. So take the first 2 blocks in the first row, stitch them together 1/4 inch, then stitch on the third block 1/4 inch. Go to the second row and do the same thing, and then the third row. After that, go to your ironing board. Press the seams on the back side. Then turn it over to the front, and you're going to press the seams on top. And with your iron, you want to keep the rows lifted slightly. With the iron, push against the seams as you press, so that you can get the seams going all in the same direction. You want to make sure that the seams in the first and third row are all going in the same direction. The middle row goes in the opposite direction. Now you want to bring and stitch the rows together. So take your first 2 rows and bring front sides together. Line up your seams. Get them real close together. Now the seam on the bottom should be going in the opposite direction than the seam on top. Once you have it lined up, place a pin there to hold, and then go over here and line these 2 seams up and pin it. Now verify that the seam on the bottom is going in the opposite direction than the one on top. This is very important. Make sure on both of them. Then stitch 1/4 inch seam along here. Then after you've got these two stitched together, then you would take the last row, bring it on top, line up your seams the same way, pin them, always check to make sure the seams are going in the opposite direction, and then stitch 1/4 inch. Now press your seams on the back side, then unfold and press on top. Do that with both of your seams. And this is what it would look like on the back. So you can see these seams are going this way, these seams here are going in the opposite direction, and this one is going that way. Very important, it'll make your quilt block very flat and it will look much better. Lay your blocks out in this order, starting with a solid, a 9 patch, a solid, a 9 patch, and ending with a solid. After laying them out, stitch the blocks together. So bring the first two together, line up your edges, and stitch 1/4 inch seam. Then go and add on the third block, stitching it together, going all the way down till you have all of the blocks stitched together. After you have all of the blocks stitched together, you want to turn it over on the back side and press all of your seams. And continue on down, pressing all of the seams. Turn the table runner over to where the front side is up. Now you're going to press the seams on top. Lift up your table runner and you're going to push against this seam with your iron, forcing the seam to go in that direction. So you need to keep it lifted pretty good, and I'll usually push with my fingers on that seam to get it started, and push against it with your iron to get it to go all in one direction. And then go on down to the next seam, pushing against it and pressing. Place your two strips that you've cut out for the back that are 12.5 inches wide. Leave them folded, selvage edges together, then stack them on top of each other. Line them up. You're going to trim the selvage edges off. So place a line on your ruler on the edge of your fabric so that you know you're cutting it straight on the end, and cut it off. Then open up both strips and bring front sides together and stitch anywhere from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch seam along here. It doesn't really matter as long as it's straight. Right now your fabric for the back is too long for the table runner top, so we will be cutting it down to fit in a moment. Right now, lay out your cotton batting. Don't cut it to size just yet either. Just lay it out. Take the fabric for the back and place it with the back side against the cotton batting. So you're looking at the pretty side. And don't worry about lining up any edges with your cotton batting. Take the table runner top piece and line it up with the edges of the fabric for the back. Again, still don't worry about that cotton batting, because we're going to cut everything to fit all at the same time. So now you're going to place a few pins just to hold the table runner together. So place it just through the center all the way down to the end. After you've got it all pinned all the way down, then you're going to line your ruler up and trim this edge of the cotton batting to be an exact match. After you've trimmed that part off, then go to the other end of the table runner. Here is the end of the top of the table runner. I'm now going to trim the fabric for the back and the cotton batting to be an exact fit at this edge. So line it up and go ahead and trim it off. Once you have both ends trimmed, then you're going to trim the sides. Make sure that all your layers are still pinned together so nothing shifts. Line up your ruler on this edge of the runner and go ahead and trim the cotton batting to be an exact fit. So go all the way down this one side here and then go over and do the other side. Place pins around all four edges, pinning all of the layers together. In that center square on one side, you're going to leave an opening that you will not stitch over. So after pinning the edges, then start here. Here's my opening. Start here, stitch back and forth a few times, then continue on down all the way around. And when you come back to these two pins right here, then stop here and stitch back and forth. Here is a tip for stitching around the corners. As you're stitching down towards this corner, you're going to stop 1/4 inch away from the end. So leave the needle down in your fabric, lift up the presser foot, then turn the table runner and continue stitching. I recommend you use a walking foot when you're doing your stitching from now on while putting this table runner together. The cotton batting is thick. You've got 3 layers of fabric you're trying to stitch through. And if you use a regular presser foot, you could get your tucks in your fabric as you're stitching, and also a regular presser foot could cause your fabric to shift. So if you have a walking foot, I highly recommend you use it. After you've completed all your stitching, trim some of the excess fabric off of all 4 corners and just leave about 1/8 inch of fabric. I also cut some off of the side a little bit. This will make it easier for your corners to lay much flatter. Reach inside the opening and begin pulling the front side of the table runner out. And reach inside and poke your corners out. At the opening, fold the edges in 1/4 inch and then place pins to hold it closed. And then all along the edges, place pins to flatten the edges. Also go to your ironing board and then press the entire top before you begin doing your stitching around the edge. After you've done that, you want to stitch real close to the edge all the way around all 4 sides. The last step is to do quilting stitches over the top. And I also call it top stitching because you're literally stitching from the top down through to the bottom layer. This helps hold the table runner together, and it's also very decorative. You can do a straight stitch, or you can use something like this, which is called a serpentine stitch. So if you have quilting stitches on your machine, I recommend you use one of those. Now, if you're not used to stitching on this, how it's going to be is these stitches rows of stitching are 4 inches apart because that's the finished size of your squares in your 9 patch. So you can either use tailor's chalk, line it up with this row, you pull this over, line up your ruler with this row over here, and then you can use tailor's chalk and draw lines. When you're over here on your 9 patch, all you need to do is, if you're doing a straight stitch, is to do stitch in the ditch, where your needle just goes right in that seam right along there. So you would first do your rows going all the way from one end of the runner to the other, and then of course then come back and go over every 4 inches going this way all the way across the runner. Well, here it is. It's all done. I think this is a great project to start with if you're trying to learn a little bit about basic quilting. Now, if you're interested in other table runner projects to do, go to the green screen at the end of this video and click on the links. If you like this video, click on the thumbs up button. Also, click on share to share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click on that red button down there in the lower right hand corner of your screen. Enter your email address, click on the little bell so you receive future email notifications about my latest video. I'm Cheryl, and I'm so glad you came to my sewing room. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing!